If you want to live a strong, free and mobile life, then you need to look after your fascia. So many people have tightness and weakness somewhere in their bodies, and often the answer lies within their fascia. Science is only just discovering the importance of the role that fascia has on the human system. So I'm here to tell you what the hell is fascia and why is it so important. First, why am I out here in nature? Well, that's because fascia is made by nature. And this means as humans, we may never fully understand how exactly fascia works, but we can certainly do a good job of understanding it enough to help us live a full and natural life. Fascia is a sensory organ. I can close my eyes and do a sort of body scan, and the information that I'm receiving is actually coming from my fascia. Fascia has interoceptive receptors, which basically means I can sense internally what is going on in my body at any given time. This is super important because if you have this interoceptive feedback going on all the time, if there is an issue with your fascia, it will constantly be recepting back to your brain that there is an issue. For example, if there's a tightness within the fascia of your diaphragm, this is going to send signals directly to your brain that something is wrong. And if this is happening all the time, then an issue with your fascia could possibly be giving you anxiety. Now, it's important to remember that fascia is only one part of the system. But if we can get our fascia nice and healthy, we can really give our bodies a sense of well-being from a really deep internal place. Now, I've already mentioned that fascia connects our body to our brain, but it also connects all our muscles together and our bones. Now, this is super important when we're trying to fix tightnesses in the body. Not many people know this, but our fascia and our muscles actually work to pull our bones apart. This handy little children's toy explains this perfectly. If you imagine that the hard structures in this are bones and the elastic structures are our fascia, when they are set up in a system like this called a Tensegrity system, the elastic parts actually work to hold the hard parts away from each other. This is exactly how our fascia works in our body, always holding our bones apart, counteracting the forces of gravity. If you can imagine, what gravity is wanting to do is crush this system. If there was no elasticity in it, it would crush the system and the bones would just smush on the floor like so. But luckily our fascia's there to spring it back into shape. So if this is the case, and our fascia is holding our bones apart from each other, you can imagine if our fascia isn't working correctly, then we could get some sort of compression within our joints. So if I just tie this up like so, then you can see here that now these two bones here are really close to each other, and if I tie it up again, they're actually touching. This obviously is really not good for the human body to have bone on bone touching all the time. And all this is a very commonly known thing called a knot. And knots can cause some pretty bad things in the body. So now we know that the fascia holds the body apart rather than together. It's important to know how fascia actually behaves as a tissue. These are essentially elastic bands. This is exactly how fascia works in our body. The fascia in our body is super springy. Springy fascia is healthy fascia. This means that when our body goes through everyday life and the forces of everyday life are put on it, we spring back to shape and we have a lot of shock absorption in our system. So lovely healthy fascia is lovely springy fascia. Now it's important to know this because when we work our fascia, we need to use its springy nature to get the best effect from how we work it. A huge common problem when people try to tackle tightness and knots in the body is they use static stretching to help these issues. Now, the problem with this stems from the fact that our fascia and nervous system are connected as one. And a body has a phenomenon where when a stretch is held for roughly over 4 seconds, the nervous system actually switches off the sensors going to that muscle and basically turns the muscle off, allowing it to relax. This, in turn, makes what is our elastic bands long and floppy. If you can imagine, the same problem can happen if these were to be longer, then you could still end up getting compression in your joints. So to really work our fascia in a lovely stable way to undo knots and get them to stay like that, we need to use movements that are going to work with the springiness of our fascia and not switch them off like a static stretch would. Good. So now we know roughly how the fascia works and how, if we want to make it strong and stable, we want to stretch it and allow it to come back to its normal shape rather than letting it stretch and just relax and become unstable. Now it's time to learn where the fascia is in our body. So a super interesting thing about fascia is that it connects our whole body and it surrounds our whole body, but it's set up in different lines or continuities that connect our whole body together in different directions. So as you can see here on this poster, this is the superficial back line. This line goes from the bottom of the foot, the plantar fascia, all the way up the back of the calf, through the hamstring. It gets to the pelvis and then goes up the spine, around the sacrum, up the spinal rectors, and then in through the back of the neck, over the skull, and actually connects into the top of our eyebrows here. So you can imagine that this fascial line will hold us up straight when we're standing. Just to give you an idea, there is an equal and opposite line on the front of the body too. This is called the superficial front line. So this starts at the toes, goes up the front of the shin, up the quad, into the hip, and then again starts in the lower abdominals, comes up to the clavicle, and then in behind the ear. And so these two lines aid to hold the body up straight. Now I'm not going to show you all the lines because there is a few of them, but it kind of gives you the idea that these lines are connected in specific ways. So we will need to train them in specific ways too. Just to give you an idea, there is 2 lines on the back, there are 2 lines on their front, there's 1 line that goes up through the middle of the body and houses the diaphragm, there's lines that go up the side, which we'll get to later because there's something really interesting about them. There is a spiral line that spirals around the whole body, keeping it tight in like a seat belt, and then there are 2 arm lines for the front and 2 arm lines for the back. So understanding these lines and continuities, it unlocks the key to be able to use these to fix tightnesses and weakness in the body, because oftentimes a pain in the body or a tightness might actually be from another one of these fascial lines. So if I'm experiencing tightness in the neck through the sideline, it might actually be where the sideline crosses the hip joint, which is actually tight there, and it's pulling down on my neck and giving me this neck pain. So there you go. I've already mentioned that when the fascia gets knotted, it can cause havoc on your body, and that mobility work can help free the fascia and make it lovely and healthy. But here's just one extra fun fact that shows the importance of fascia. So I've already mentioned earlier that we have some side lines, and there's something interesting about these side lines. Basically, if you can imagine somewhere along these 2 lines, your body gets knotted and tight. If you could imagine, if one side of my body is tight, and then the other side of the body is tight also, there's only one direction my body can go, and that is down. So then the opposite end of this, if one side of my body is lovely and free and so the other side's lovely and free, what I'm trying to say is basically good proper freedom in your fascia and good proper mobility actually allows the body to grow taller. And this has happened in real life cases. People have actually been able to make themselves taller just by giving their body the space that you're essentially born with, but most people live without even realizing it's there. So if that hasn't convinced you that fascia is super important, then I don't know what will. To see more of this mobility work and ways to free your body, subscribe to this channel because I'm going to be bringing out a lot of good stuff. Boom.